And thank you, all of the attendees and Janet, and just it's really just a pleasure and honor to be with you guys to talk about Hope and to talk about the resources that are available. Hope is a community development financial institution providing access to capital to people and places that have not had access to those resources. As Carol mentioned, I started in the Mississippi Delta providing, as a commercial lender, providing access to those resources where, and also technical assistance. I think that's the key when you think about resources and not having access. If you have the resource and you don't have the technical assistance arm of that, where people are walking alongside you to help you manage those resources and, get what you need for your business. I think having that arm and those things joined together is critical for a small business. So know that Hope is that resource for you. As a credit union, Hope provides all of the services that a commercial bank would provide, from mortgage lending to, Kathy mentioned her expertise in financial literacy. So people that have had challenges with their credit or challenges with their business lending experience with the financial institution, we welcome those people. We welcome them and we'll hold your hand and walk alongside you on your financial journey. And credit union, the credit union movement is a partnership. So you're a member when you join the credit union. And so having that resource in your back door, in your community, we're in 5 states across the Deep South. We're in Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana, and Alabama. And having that critical resource, I can't stress that enough, in knowing that it's available to you. So if you don't get anything else, know that becoming a member of Hope is an important part of your financial future. Kathy's gonna dig into the Paycheck Protection Program. She has been really leading the efforts with our team. I will share my screen at this point and walk through some of the slides. So here we go. I'm gonna try. And just let me know when and if you see it.
Yes, so we can see it, Cassandra.
Okay, all right, let's see from the beginning. That's where we want to go. Ooh, all right.
Thank you.
You missed the nice.
We're all getting experts in this virtual environment, right? So thank you so much, Cassandra. And I am happy to be here along with Cassandra from Hope. And we welcome, it looks like there are about 129 of us on this call. So we would like to walk through this information for the PPP program and for childcare services. When I walk through some of the slides, I'll try to be really specific for your particular industry. But I just want to do just an overview just so that we all understand where this came from. So there was money that was allocated by Congress on last year for a Paycheck Protection Program. And this was to ensure that small businesses were able to keep some sense of continuity and to be able to maintain employees and keep employees on and keep their businesses open. So there's many things that goes into this. And so I'm going to walk through this and explain what first draw and second draw means and how you apply and what documentation you need so that you can get your applications in to sustain your businesses. We can go to the next slide. So this Paycheck Protection Program supports new eligible organizations that were affected by COVID. So since this is the second time around, there were some businesses that were not eligible to participate in the first round that can now participate in this round. So that's what that means. And that includes some housing cooperatives. There are more nonprofits that can participate this time, some marketing organizations. In the last round, it was always allocated for your payroll, that 60% of your payroll could be allocated as eligible expenses in addition to other expenses. The reason why we have this here on this slide is because the definition of payroll expenses has been extended, and you can use employee benefit cost. Employee benefit costs are the costs that you have as an employee for payroll expenses, for sick leave, for vacation, for family leave, for insurances. All of those can be included in your payroll cost. So we will dig into the amount that you can qualify for, but if you are awarded funds, just know that 60% can be used for payroll, and it is extended definition of payroll. And then other expenses are included, and that was extended as well. The expenses include rent, mortgage, interest, utilities. Those are pretty much the same from the last round. But in this round, other debt services were included, operational expenses, property damage, supplier costs, and worker protection expenses. We know that many businesses, especially childcare businesses, had to put many measures in place, which did include, in many situations, equipment and other things that you had to put into your business to ensure that you were following COVID safety measures. And so those costs are included.
And I'll
And there's
also
many,
note, Kathy, let me jump in right
yes,
here to
sure,
make one
at any
point.
time,
I'll
Cassandra.
also note that even though Kathy's saying the 60% of funds can be used for payroll, you can actually use 100%, but the 60%, at least 60% must be used, but you can use 100% of these resources to cover payroll. So if you have these other expenses, that's fine, but just know that 100% can be used for
Yes, that's
payroll.
good clarity, Cassandra. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, this is the next slide. So we call this a loan, and it is a loan, okay, because it is a forgivable loan, but it is a loan, and you would have to take extra measures and apply for forgiveness after a covered period. Pretty much after you use the funds and after 10 months, you would have to apply for forgiveness. And I like to stress that because you will have to take those extra measures to apply for forgiveness further down the road. So just know that it is out there as a loan. The interest does not accrue during that period, but if you do not apply for forgiveness, it could accrue interest at 1%. It would turn into a loan with a 5-year maturity. There's no collateral involved. There's no personal guarantees required. There's no fees, no closing cost fees from SBA. And this is an important date. The final date to apply is March the 31st of 2021. So we're already into February. So now we have less than 2 months to do this. Next slide. Okay, so these are two terms that are used. There are first draw applicants, there are second draw applicants. I will define what a first draw is. Any small businesses eligible that did not receive funding in the first, we'll say first or second round, but you didn't receive funding in the first round. So that means you did not receive funding and you want to apply for this Paycheck Protection Program, you would be considered a first draw applicant. And there is documentation that is required. So we'll go into how you go into the system, but these are the documents that you would need to prepare. You would need your IRS forms. So depending on your structure and being in the childcare business, you could be structured as any other business structure could be. You could be a sole proprietor, you could be a LLC, you might be, you may have a partnership, whatever it is. So that would align with what IRS tax forms you file. So you would need to have those tax forms available. And those tax forms can be from the calendar year of 2019 or the calendar year of 2020. In most situations, you would be presenting the 2019 calendar year because those tax returns may show you having higher expenses and higher payroll and all of those financials than it would in 2020, but it doesn't matter. You can submit 2019 or 2020. You would also have to submit your financial statements. Again, that is going to determine That is going to be determined by how you file and what documentation you can present to us. So I would suggest, if you have your 2019 tax return and you have your 2019 financial statements, if you file financial statements, then you should prepare those and submit those to us. Also, and I'm presenting to you everything that if you have it, that you should prepare it, because depending on your structure, and in this 1 hour session, it's impossible for us to go through every single situation for every single structure. But these are documents that we could require, because we do have to verify that your business was in operations as of February 15th of 2020. So invoice would verify that, or a bank statement would verify that. But if you were in business before that time and you submitted a 2019 tax return, that would be sufficient confirmation for us. But here we are presenting all the information that would possibly be needed, determining, because of your structure. Okay. So we would definitely need your IRS tax form. If you have financial statements, send it in. If you have an invoice, send it in, and you would be pretty much complete. You
There's
also
also
have to.
a list on our website. I'm sorry, Kathy, we're jumping in.
No. I want you to jump in. That's fine.
Yeah.
We're a tag team
On the
here.
website, when you apply, there is a My Documents tab that you can click on to get this information. We're going to kind of speed through this, because I know that if you have questions, hopefully we'll be able to take some time to answer those. So Kathy, I'm going to jump to the next slide.
Okay, and you will have to complete an SBA application that is presented to you when you get in the system, and submit your ID. Next slide. Okay, so from that information that you would determine, you submit, then we determine how much your monthly payroll is. There is a calculation sheet that is presented to you when you are completing the application that would assist you, so you would get some idea. And so that's basically, we're going to come up with what your average monthly payroll is. Or if we're presented with a yearly amount, we'll divide that by 12, multiply that times 2.5. That will determine what your maximum loan amount will be. Next slide. Okay, then there's second draw. So second draw simply means that you did get Paycheck Protection funds in the first round. So what you have to do in this situation is you have to submit a SBA form. But we do have to in order for you to be eligible, you must demonstrate that you experienced a 25% revenue reduction in gross receipts. And we would be comparing year 2019 to 2020. Again, we're going to determine that from your tax forms, and we're going to determine that from your gross receipts. So depending on, how you get your income, you would have to submit that documentation so we can determine that. The first level of eligibility is to ensure that there is a reduction. If there is a reduction, and that could be in any one quarter, if we see a reduction, you would be eligible. And then again, we would determine what your payroll is, take that average times 2.5, and that would determine your loan amount. So basically, some of the same information that we talked about in first draw, that documentation would be required. In addition to that, we would need to determine what your gross receipts represent so that we can do that comparison. Valid driver's license, application, financial information is what needs to be submitted. Next slide. Okay, and we talked about that. So that we need to determine that 25% and then look at the average. So generally, eligible applicants include all small businesses that have less than 300 employees. There is an exception to that. If you are an accommodation or food services business, you can have up to 500 employees, and the calculation is a little bit different. It's 3.5 as opposed to 2.5. We highlighted tribal businesses in here because they were not eligible on the last time, but independently owned franchises, self-employed workers, independent contractors, gig workers, sole proprietors are all eligible to apply. Next slide. And businesses that can't, it's any business that is engaged in lobbying or political activities, businesses special administration that are out of special administration region of Hong Kong and all of those. I just want to mention, because this is coming up a lot, shuttered venue operator grant under section 24. That grant has not been rolled out yet, but it is going to be a grant that's going to be available to businesses that are in entertainment and the theater business. If you get that grant, then you would not be eligible for PPP, but it hasn't even been rolled out yet. Next slide. Okay, and this just says that the maximum loan amount is $2 million. Companies that were funded with PPP loans in the first round may be eligible to borrow in this round as long as all of their previous funds have either been used or will be used before the second draw is funded. So again, for second draw borrowers, if you received funds but you have not used all the funds, please use them before we fund the loan. You can go ahead on and apply, but you would have to use them before they were funded. Also, one thing that I did want to mention is if you do have an independent contractors, they would need to apply on their own. You cannot include their payroll in your financials. If you 1099 them, they are considered independent and they can apply for Paycheck Protection on their own. So at this point, we're just asking that you would gather all your financial information, make sure that you have all the pertinent documentation before you start your application. You can look at the calculation sheet so that you can get some idea of what your funded loan amount would be, and only submit completed and signed documentation so we can expedite that process for you. In order to apply, you would go to this website here, or you can simply go to www.hopecu.org/PPP, and the information is out there for you to apply. It will walk you, it will send you a link, and you would go to that link to apply, and the application is there. SBA application is submitted. And in that system is where you would upload all of your financial documents. And that completes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer questions. I know that was quick. We only had 15 minutes, but we'll be happy to clarify any of this information or answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Let me ask, will you share those slides with me so that I can share them with people who are on the webinar today?
We
Sure.
absolutely will.
That would be great. We do have a couple of questions. One is, when comparing 2019 and 2020, do we include the previous PPP funds in our revenue figure?
That is a great question. You do not.
All right.
You do not. Let me just add to that. You will need to have your SBA number when you submit the application if you did receive funds in the first round. And if you don't have to go back to the original lender. So if that original lender was not Hope and you choose to come to Hope, that's fine. You do not have to go back to the original lender.
And another question, I am director of a child care center housed in a church. I am not the owner. Can I submit the appropriate documentation, or does the church need to apply?
So that would mean that there is not a separate entity for that child care, is what I'm understanding. And if that is the case, then the church would have to apply, and churches can apply.
All right, let's see. We were in the process of opening, but got delayed because of COVID. Is there someone I could speak with personally?
Sure, but in order to qualify for any PPP funds, the business would have to have been open and operating by February 15th of 2020.
And I believe we had someone submit a question in the chat. In regard to the second PPP, I've been advised to work with the same company, the bank that worked with my first PPP. Is that accurate, or is that required, or does it matter?
Okay, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. You don't have to, but yeah, doesn't matter.
Sandra and Kathy, I didn't want to interject, but you might want to mention that there's priorities for certain lenders. However, so certain lenders they have a set aside bucket for certain lenders. And Hope would be in that group, correct?
Hope would. So thank you for mentioning that. So as Cassandra initially, when she introduced Hope, we're community development financial institutions. So they are set aside funds for community development financial institutions and smaller financial institutions. In addition to the set aside funds, periodically we have set aside time periods where SBA will only accept our applications. So there are some advantages with working with the CDFIs.
And also minority depository institutions have the same designation. So yes.
If I was not approved due to a credit history, should I apply again?
So credit is not pulled for these loans. So I'm not sure what the reason for that declination was, if that was a decline due to PPP, because credit is not a factor in this.
If you applied directly to the SBA for a loan, I am aware that some people indicated that they did not receive funding due to credit, but for PPP, Kathy is correct.
If you just received the PPP, can you apply again now?
So if you received first draw, this round is what I'm thinking the question is. Those funds would have to have been used by the end of January in order for you to apply for second round in this period. That would be the only way that you could apply for both within these first 3 months.
I missed the step needed to join Hope. Can you say again what the process is to join?
Sure. So if you submit an application, someone will reach out to you in reference to that membership process. However, we can send you information in reference to joining Hope, or you can always go to our website.
How do I know if my first PPP loan has been forgiven, and what is the process for forgiveness?
So Kathy, I'll take that one. The
Sure.
forgiveness process for Hope, we have a portal, and a third-party accounting firm is leading that effort for us. So if it was with Hope, then they would go through our portal, which is actually on our website, the Hope, www.hopecu.org/PPP. There's a link for the forgiveness. But if it was not Hope, then just contacting your lender and they would advise you of what their process is. But I will say too that Congress changed the rules for loans under $150,000. So there is a new form that is on in our portal, but all of the lenders have it, that basically you sign the form attesting to the fact that your loan was under $150,000. You don't have to provide any supporting documentation. Just basically you're signing, completing the one form and not, providing that documentation, and that loan is automatically forgiven. So loans under $150,000, Congress passed that recently, and they're automatically forgiven.
Do you have to have a bank account at the credit union in order to get a PPP loan from Hope?
You do not.
You do not.
We would love for you to be a member.
That
was that whole spiel on the beginning.
Yeah,
we would love for you to be a member.
Yeah, we
Go
would
ahead,
encourage it. We would encourage it, and it helps speeds up the process for funding, but it's not mandatory.
All right. Let's see. If a provider, a child care center, received additional funding through the child care certificate program during the pandemic, do you need to include that in your application?
So again, it depends on your structure, because it could be, depending on how you're structured, it could be a part of your gross receipts, right? Because for certain structures, gross receipts are any income, any grants, or anything that you received. So, you know, it's probably a one-off question, but it could.
I work at a church-controlled entity as an independent contractor. Can I apply, and what documentation should I have?
So you would apply as a independent small business, and if you are the only employee, then, you know, depending on if you're first draw or second draw, you would need your IRS tax form that you file. Let's just say you are the only employee, so you're a sole proprietor. That would be, for an example, that would be IRS 1040, which would also include a Schedule C. And if it's your first draw, then you would need to submit that with the calculation sheet, with the SBA application, and a copy of your driver's license.
What about seasonal workers paid in cash? How do I go about applying, or what do I need to do?
So seasonal workers can apply as long as you are in business more than 6 months throughout the year. You can apply, and you would submit, again, it depends on how you file your taxes. You would submit the aligning IRS tax forms. If it's a second draw, any financials, gross receipts, you would just submit everything. Your calculation is just looked at a little bit differently, because you are seasonal and your income doesn't come in all year. But the documentation and the process is the same. And
Right.
you are allowed to apply.
Well, we still have a few questions, but I'm going to move to Janet so that we can get to the second half of the presentation, and we'll come back to questions again when you're done, Janet. Again, I just want to thank you, Kathy and Cassandra, so much for that presentation. And please, if you have time and can, we'd love for you to stay through the second half of the presentation so that you can help with questions at the end. But at this point, I would like to introduce Janet. Janet Dickens serves as an assistant director with the Mississippi Small Business Development Center. She's currently working to develop communications and programming for the COVID-19 response. Janet joined the Small Business Development Center after 7 years in the hospitality industry and general legal counsel for Charter Road Hospitality, a hotel group based in Oxford. She's an adjunct instructor with the University of Mississippi School of Business for Business Communications. She is a graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi School of Business and the University of Mississippi School of Law. She furthered her educational development with a Master of Laws in Taxation from the University of Florida Levin College of Law. She and her husband have a 7-month-old daughter, Kate. Congratulations on Kate, Janet, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll turn it over to you for this next presentation, and then we'll return to questions.
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you again for asking us to be here. I had the opportunity a while back, before I had Kate, which seems like a world away at this point, to present with Hope on the Back to Business grant. And so it's really a passion of mine to get this information out, and we want to help small businesses. And so the things that I'm going to be talking about today are the economic injury disaster loans. We call them EIDL in the biz, and then targeted EIDL advance. And once again, my name is Janet Dickens, and I'm Assistant Director with the Small Business Development Center. One of the things that I have to do, because I am also an attorney, is just to give a little disclaimer in the very beginning. It's my housekeeping, if you will, that basically that nothing in here is intended to be legal advice, and nothing within my presentation is intending to form an attorney-client relationship with any of you wonderful folks who are watching today. wanted to give a little info just about the Small Business Development Center, and I feel like there's something that potentially is kind of in the way of this with a whiteboard, isn't there? Sorry, y'all. Can we see better now?
Not sure. I hope it's not me. I will
Oops.
see if I need
I
to
had to shrink it out or something.
stop sharing.
I don't think it, well, maybe. Sorry. Sorry, guys. In just a second, we'll be back. I can at least move it just at the bottom if that, I don't know what that is, but it might have something to do with the Zoom platform. Hopefully not. Okay. So the Mississippi Small Business Development Center, we have actually been around in Mississippi since 1981. We are a federally funded program, and we have offices all over the state, and we help small businesses in every stage of their business cycle, from creating your business plan and getting started to growing your business and even kind of succession in planning. And so in addition to our core services, what I'm going to talk about on the next slide, we also have some specialty services with cybersecurity, tech commercialization, helping in rural development, international trade, marketing research. It pulled out a share screen again. Marketing research and disaster recovery. So some of our core services are free of cost and confidential business counseling. We also provide entrepreneurship workshops. We help with business plans and help businesses access capital. So that means help you find funding for your business. And since COVID-19, we have been doing a ton of help with keeping the continuity of business going. But surprisingly, we've also had some business startups in this 2020 year. This is a map that shows that all of our centers, we currently are working virtually, but we are still working. We are still taking appointments. It is just through the Zoom platform. So we have 8 full service centers. And in addition to that, we have some sub centers that are at the MDA offices in Jackson. We also have the city of Jackson has an office. We've just put in a Copiah Lincoln little satellite office as well. And we're working with MDA and also Secretary of State on some projects for COVID-19 relief. So really a broad reach that the SBDC has in the state of Mississippi. I know this is the part that you're actually waiting for, the information about the COVID-19 relief. So I'll get into that. So the economic injury disaster loans, this has been around for a little bit since the start of the pandemic, and I'll talk about history in a second, but I want to give you just a brief overview of what each one is. So economic injury disaster loan, it is a long-term, low-interest working capital disaster loan. So it's a loan to help you pay your day-to-day expenses. And it's for small businesses, nonprofits, agricultural businesses, and it's for those that they have sustained an economic injury due to COVID-19. And these are administered directly through the SBA, so through the SBA website. This is different than what we were talking about with the Hope Group. The Hope Group, you apply actually through a bank for PPP, and SBA funds it through the bank, and the bank distributes it out. And this is different because you actually apply directly through SBA for this type of loan. And then also we're going to talk about the targeted EIDL advance. And so this is basically a grant, if you will, that provides businesses. We have a couple of different areas, and I'll go through this in history, but this particular target grant is for low-income communities that are needing additional funds to help their business continuity keep going. And so to be eligible for the targeted one that we're talking about today, you have to have applied for an EIDL loan prior to December 27th, 2020. I want to give a little history because I feel like so many things have happened between when we went into, March 2020, flatten the curve, to now. It's almost been a year, and so many changes and so many programs have rolled out that I think it's helpful to give a little history. So if you will rewind back to when we went into the beginning of this pandemic for the United States, President Trump declared a national disaster due to COVID-19, and this opened up for 7A disaster loans. These loans were already around before. We used them when people went into an emergency and they had issues like a hurricane or the wildfires or tornadoes. And so SBA has been doing these particular loans. It just got opened up to this giant pandemic. So as you can imagine, the rollout was kind of crazy because they're used to dealing with these type of disaster loans in, specific areas like South Mississippi when we have a hurricane. Now they have the whole nation applying for these type of loans. So we've been through quite a few applications on this and different processes. But one of the things that they added on to this loan was that there would be a $10,000 advance. If you applied for this and you were eligible, you would get a $10,000 advance within 3 days of application. And that did not work out like that at all. There wasn't enough funding, and it was a very overloaded process for SBA. And so some people got $1,000 per employee, and then some people got nothing. So Congress wanted to fix that. And so that's why they put out the targeted EIDL advances. So we're going to talk about both of these items today. EIDL loan is still open. It was supposed to close on December 31st, 2020, but Congress extended it through the Consolidated Appropriations Act all the way into December 31st, 2021. And they are reopening that EIDL advance for certain groups. So first of all, just a little bit of facts and info, because you can still apply for these EIDL loans, is that it's for up to $2 million, and the interest in terms are 3.75% for a term up to 30 years. So a really long term on these loans. It's better than normally what you can get from a commercial lender with a 30-year. And then the loans of more than $25,000, the SBA would take collateral. That means they would want to put a deed of trust on your property, or they would do some sort of like UCC filing. And then the EIDL advance, like we said, this is not an actual loan. So you can get up to $10,000, and there aren't interest in terms or collateral because it's not a loan. And the EIDL is not forgivable. So this is a loan. It's going to stay as a loan. We don't have a forgiveness application in the same way that we had for PPP. And then the targeted EIDL advance, you don't have to repay that. It is basically like a grant. So who's eligible for both of these? So EIDL, if you are a business that has sustained a economic injury due to COVID-19 and you fall within one of these categories, that's businesses with 500 or fewer, cooperative with 500 or fewer, ag with 500 or fewer, most private nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and sole proprietorships and independent contractors, you would be in the qualification bucket for this. Then for targeted EIDL advance, you have to have applied for EIDL before December 27th, 2020, and you did not receive your full $10,000 advance amount, or you got no advance at all. And then in addition to that, you would have to have less than 300 employees, be located in a low-income area, and have experienced a 30% reduction in your gross receipts during any 8-week period between March 2nd and December 2nd, 2020, comparable to any 8-week period prior to that March 2nd, 2020. So you might be asking, how do you know if you're in low income area to be qualified to get a revisit on this particular advance? Well, they actually have defined that under the new market tax credit section of the IRS code for what a low income area is. And I'm not going to go through that big long definition. Just give you a reference in case you just feel like reading tax code. But also I gave a website here at the very bottom of this slide, and you can go in and type in your address, and it should tell you whether you were in a new market tax credit area. So that should give you a good idea whether or not you would be in located in the low income area qualifying for the advance. So how do you apply? So for the EIDL, you're just going to apply directly through the SBA website. We have the link in this slide, and EIDL is available through December 31st, 2021. And then the targeted EIDL advance, SBA is going to be reaching out to people that they think are qualified, and they're going to send out an email to those people. So it would be the same email address that you have had communication with SBA when you did that application in the beginning. And what do you need to apply? So if you do decide that you want to do an EIDL loan, you're going to need your business legal name, your social security or the EIN for that business, the type of business entity that you're in, your gross revenue for 12 months prior to the disaster, and your cost of goods sold for 12 months prior to the disaster, compensation from other sources for the disaster, and your number of employees before the disaster. And then if you are contacted and it does appear that you can get the EIDL advance, what do you need? Well, you're going to need to be able to show that you had a 30% reduction in revenue during any 8-week period beginning on March 2nd, 2020, that whole definition we just went through. One of the things you do need is your 2019 tax return. So if you have filed, you would need to get on that in filing. And you've got to be prepared to show that decline in revenue, whether you need to show that in bank statements, financial statements, tax returns, but you have to be able to verify that. Then how can you spend it? So EIDL proceeds can be used for a wide array of working capital needs. Those are like day-to-day needs, such as healthcare benefits, rent, utilities, fixed debt payment. The targeted EIDL advance can be used for a number of items as well. So you could pay for your paid sick leave to maintain your payroll as well. If you had to pay for more things for, production costs due to issues with COVID, like supply chain disruptions, or pay other business obligations due to COVID, and also debts, rent, mortgage payments, so all that day-to-day operating, and it's a little bit more flexible than what you can pay with PPP funds. So I wanted to go a little bit more into, if you are interested in applying for EIDL at this point, this is the loan, what the process is. I want to watch my time and make sure I'm doing this where we have time for question and answer too. So it's just, once again, you would apply through the SBA website, and then they would give you a loan quote estimating how much they think that you could get in a maximum loan. You could select that amount, and then they would do an application review, which a loan officer is going to do that. Remember, this is just like getting a regular loan. The bank is, just how the bank would be looking like if you were getting a mortgage or a home loan. They are checking credit. They're also making sure you can actually pay it back. So they're looking at whether you're going to have enough revenues to be able to pay this loan back. So it's not a given. It's not the same as the PPP. And then they'll make a loan decision. So if you get approved, they're going to email you that you've had approval, and they'll send loan documents. There should be a transfer of funds within 5 to 10 business days. And just a reminder, you got to keep records for at least 3 years, and they will have a payment restart. They've been given some flexibility on that. So I think it could be up to 6 months to a year before you'd actually have to start paying that funds back. And then if you're declined, they'll also send a decline letter. Applicants can request reconsideration. There is an appeal process. You have to do it within 6 months. And if you happen to be somebody that applied for these EIDL loans and you've been sitting in limbo for a little while, I am aware of some folks that are in that situation. The Consolidated Appropriations Act did task SBA with clearing out the backlog. So I would expect some movement coming soon if you are in that category. And then if you need to check your application status, I've got the email address to do that, and also the 1-800 number as well. And I've also included links to frequently asked questions for both of these items, for the targeted EIDL advance and also the EIDL loans. These are pretty helpful. At this point, we've gone through a lot of the issues at this point. So I think SBA has got a pretty good list for if you have questions. So if you do need help, that is what we are here for, is the Small Business Development Center. So you can request free confidential counseling through us to help your business in the application process of these EIDL loans. Or if you have certain questions about the targeted EIDL advance, whatever process, where place you might be in this process, we are available. So you can register for counseling through www.msssbdc.org. And then also you can follow us on social media if you want to continue to get updates. And our handle for everything is at Mississippi SBDC. And at this point, I'm happy to take questions. I always have to show that we're funded through SBA and all of our centers. So I'll go back up to the need help. But
Thank you so much for that information. And again, we will be sharing the slides with everyone who has joined the webinar. So if you didn't jot down those websites and toll-free numbers, they'll be in the slides that we send after the webinar. We have several questions, so I'll go back to those. And Kathy and Cassandra, if you want to join again to help with the questions. There were some that were left unanswered because we didn't get to them after the PPP presentation. So I'm just going to start and go through what we have. Are you going by the IRS EIN number to determine being operational for purposes of applying for PPP?
Yes.
All right. Are SBA loans eligible for forgiveness?
There are many, and Janet can probably jump into. There are many different types of SBA loans, so it just determines from loan to loan. They're all not forgivable. You would have to, go back to the guidelines for that. PPP has the option of being forgivable. Remember, you have to take that next step. So I am going to only speak for PPP, and there are, it just depends. There's many different recovery loans that are out there, and they're all not.
yeah, most of those SBA loans are not going to be forgivable. Just determine itself loan. Just remember that means that it's not forgivable. Fortunately, kind of unprecedentedly, we have had the PPP funding that has come through, and Congress has made those loans with certain stipulations forgivable if you are maintaining your payroll and your employees. And that was the point of those type of loans.
All right, let me check. To make sure that, oh, there we go. So here was another question with regard to the PPP. Do you have to have spent the first amount even though you just received it?
Yes.
Before
so
you can apply for the second. Yeah.
Yes, if it's a situation, either way, if you received first draw in 2021, or you had previous draws from the previous draw from last year, they all would have to be spent before your second draw is funded.
If your bank just awarded PPP, but you feel like you needed the 150,000, is it possible to apply with hope for the balance?
If this
I'm not
question
sure
is
about that question. Go ahead, Kathy.
let me see if I'm gonna just see if I can add some clarity. If this question is in reference to an increase to first draw, if that is the question, you have to go back to your original lender.
If I applied for the SBA loan and have not received the funds yet, can I still apply for the EIDL advance?
Okay, so if you have applied for the EIDL, and I want to before December 27th, 2020, and you are in limbo. Okay, so first of all, I would check my status, and you can go back through the slides to take a look at that. They're supposed to be clearing out backlog if it's been a little while for you, since you've heard anything. Secondly, so there's not an application right now available to you to get the advance. SBA is going through and they're determining who is to be eligible based on their size and their location in a low-income area. And then they're approaching you with an email. So whatever email you were using to do that application, and they are telling you that you appear to be eligible, and then they will allow you into a portal to be able to apply, and you would have to show your decline of your gross income at that point.
How do EIDL loans affect the 25% loss income requirement for second draw eligibility? Should EIDL loans be calculated as income?
No, so EIDL loans do not go into your income because they have to be paid back. Remember, loans are not considered actually.
What months have to be reported?
For an EIDL loan, is that what
It doesn't clarify for which the question applies to, so I'm not sure. If the person who asked that question could clarify with which application you're referencing, we can come back to that question. Where do we get the forgiveness application?
well, it's gotta be-
Forgiveness app.
And I'm
Go-
assuming that would be
Sandra.
for the PPP. Yeah.
Yeah. So forgiveness applications, you can get that by going to our website, and we will share the slide presentation, but it's www.hopecu.org/PPP and look for forgiveness. And we are using a vendor CLA. So you would be provided with a link to start that application.
How do you
So our website.
Oh, yes, sorry. How do you calculate gross goods for a child care center?
I'm guessing they're talking about EIDL on this one.
I'm guessing
cost
that
of
as
goods sold.
well. Yeah.
And not everybody has cost of goods sold. So if this is not something that is coming up for you on your normal financial statements and when you file tax returns, not everybody has that. I'm just going through and giving you a listing of everything that they ask for. If you don't have cost of goods sold, you put 0 in that field.
How may EIDL disaster loan funds be used?
So those are for basically your normal operating expenses. These are called working capital loans. And they do have frequently asked questions that you can take a look at. I have a little, I'm gonna see if I can pull it up fully. There's a big list that I can give you what is expected. Your normal day-to-day. So if you're paying rent, utilities, if you're paying for payroll costs, healthcare, it's more expanded than PPP. And I can, after the presentation, I can send a list of what the AICPA, because this went undefined for a little while, like a big list of what work.
That would be helpful.
Okay.
Does EIDL or PPP loans count as gross income?
EIDL loans are not gross income. No, they're a loan. So those would be considered a liability on your balance sheet.
Can you reapply for an SBA loan, although you have been denied?
Okay, so if you've got a loan that was sitting out there and the status is denied, you would need to do an appeal. If you start reapplying again and you're in the appeals process, it's just going to continue to get flagged by SBA and slow it down even more. So we did include in the presentation information on the appeal where you send that off to. And I can actually send a little bit more information after this on kind of some of the common areas that SBA does do rejections or declines.
For the loans that, the EIDL loan that you were speaking of, are you saying that you have 6 years before the person has to start paying it back?
No, so at least 6 months. Potentially it could go up. Sorry if I misspoke. I don't know, or I was saying it so fast, but 6 months. I can imagine this might get extended a little bit more. They're extending on a lot of SBA loans as we're still in the pandemic where you don't have to start paying right away, but at least 6 months.
Is the PPP grant the same as the loan?
I am not aware of a PPP grant. It is a loan, but it is a forgivable loan. Remember, you have to apply for forgiveness.
Can a seasonal worker apply for EIDL?
Yes, they would have to just on the whole list that we gave all that information. Yes. So if they're a sole proprietor, they could, yes.
I applied for an SBA loan, did get approved. Did the process 6 months ago. I've not heard anything concerning the loan. When I call, they say it's in review. This was 6 months ago, but they are sending me invoices. Is there someone I can speak with?
So they are so let me first clarify this. So we are funded through SBA, the Mississippi Small Business Development Center, but we are not SBA. And so we don't have any access to look in any of their information, their portal to see what's going on with loans. So we're kind of in the same boat, unfortunately, as everybody that applied, everybody we've assisted that applied. Within the presentation that we're going to send out towards the end, there you can call the number and check on status. Like I said, Consolidated Appropriations Act, Congress said to SBA, basically, we want you to start clearing out this backlog. If you are getting invoices, so you shouldn't be getting invoices for anything unless you actually receive the loan and you're in a payment period at this point. So I'm not quite sure what that specific situation is. I would call and check on status. And if you do still need help, our counselors are dealing with this on a daily basis with their clients. And so you can absolutely request counseling and talk through, get a little insight confidentially with a counselor on that specific situation.
What is the interest?
On the EIDL?
It doesn't clarify. So I'm guessing it might be helpful to say what the interest would be on the PPP loan if it wasn't forgiven, and also on the EIDL loan.
So EIDL is 3.75% interest. And then if you're a nonprofit, it's 2.75% interest.
PPP is 1%. If you don't go through forgiveness and you have to, it turns into a loan that you would have to pay. It's 1%.
But I think the thing to mention here, the goal is to get forgiveness. So if you work with a TA provider on the front end, if you aren't sure about the process, then let's make sure you're going to be forgiven before you apply, because you don't want to have to pay it back. That's I think the beauty in it. You can figure that out on the front end.
Will SBA cover mortgage payments?
I'm assuming this is EIDL.
The question is just, will SBA cover mortgage payments?
So EIDL, yes, you can do your mortgage payments with it. You cannot go and basically refinance your whole mortgage with that loan, like prepaying everything off. It has to be as it's occurring monthly. So yes, you can do mortgage payments with the EIDL.
And on the PPP side, that other 40% that you could use for, it includes mortgage interest, which in some cases is almost the whole mortgage. But
here are a couple of questions about assistance. How do I reach out or get connected with someone to help build my business? And the other question is, where do I get technical assistance?
Right. I'm assuming this is for Small Business Development Center. And yes, so you can visit our website and you can go in and register for counseling. And within 48 hours, you will receive a call back from one of our counselors to help you get set up on a counseling service. We are doing these virtually right now. So it's through a Zoom platform just like this, but it's just confidential one-on-one with your counselor.
I'm looking through to see, I believe we've covered, let's see, we've got one more question here. Can you repeat the HOPE email address for forgiveness?
It's www.hopecu.org/PPP.
And once again, just to let everyone know, we will share the slides, and the slides had these email addresses in them, so you'll be able to reference those. I think that you've responded to.
On the mortgage payments, I'm looking in the chat too.
Yeah, good.
So there might be this might be related to something different besides paying with the funds on EIDL, because there was a point in which, and it's actually continued, if you did have an SBA 504 loan, a 7A loan, a micro loan through SBA, basically they were forbearing at that point. SBA is paying the interest principal for those loans capped at $9,000. So that's going to continue for another 3 months for everybody. And then if you're in a hard hit industry, like basically it's hospitality, so it would be restaurant accommodations, they're doing another 5 months. So if that's I'm thinking that might be the question.
I believe you've addressed this, but there's another question about gross income with regard, is PPP loan considered gross income?
It is not. Again, it's a loan. It is not.
If I did not apply by December 2020, will I not be able to apply?
Are we talking on EIDL? I'm assuming. So
Go
all I
ahead.
have for EIDL, and y'all can answer for PPP. So for EIDL, the EIDL loan, yes, that is still open all the way to December 31st, 2021. If you are looking for a targeted advance, the first pre-qualifier is that you have to have had applied for the EIDL loan before December 27th, 2020. So if you are a first-time person going into EIDL, you are not going to be qualified for the EIDL advance.
PPP, it's open now, depending on whether you're first or second draw, until March 31st.
My business started before COVID, but in the middle of the year, I separated the two businesses so I can claim the business that wasn't mentioned on either one. Rather, it was PPP or EIDL loan. I'm not sure what that question is. Can I claim the business that wasn't mentioned on either one?
It depends. As long as I'm not totally clear, but if you were operational by February 15th of 2020, you can apply for that business. And again, if you did not apply in the past, you can apply as a first draw applicant on that business.
And there's a question, is there a fee for the workshops?
No, our workshops are free of cost.
Well,
And
you
you guys are assisting with PPP applications. So if you have issues with the, I guess, 25% reduction and figuring out if you qualify or not, then Janet indicated that they are providing that as a resource.
Yeah, so if you need some help kind of shaping up what you're doing going into the bank, we can help you on that too for PPP.
Fabulous. Well, we're a little over time and we've gotten to the end of our questions. So I want to just wrap us up and thank you, Janet, Cassandra, and Kathy again for being with us to share all this information. I want to encourage all of those who've joined our webinar to follow up with the Small Business Development Center or with Hope Credit Union to get the benefit of the resources that have been shared today. Again, I'm Carol Burnett with the Mississippi Low Income Child Care Initiative. You can reach out to us at info@mschildcare.org with any follow-up questions you may have. We're going to share a recording of this webinar and we'll share the slides that were provided over the course of this webinar. So thanks to everyone for joining, and good luck to everyone who tries to take advantage of these resources. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.